What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Montana Method Podcast one more time. As always, your host, Nelson Rodriguez Jr., author, creator of Montana Method. Today, I have a very special guest, Mr. Rob Minnick. Good to have you on the show, sir.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me out.
Definitely. We're here coming at you from Creative Evolution Studios. Ian Big was gracious enough to come through, let us use his spot, connected me with some cool people like Rob. This is going to be an interesting story, bro.
I'm looking forward to it.
How's it go? How was the trip? I know both of us traveled here. I'm in Miami. That's where I live. So, you're in Maryland, right?
I'm in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a decent trip.
Philly to New York is like what, 4 hours?
That depends. Usually like 3, a little less. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I walked in, and Matt was saying, "Oh, today's warm." I was wearing a tank top and shorts in Miami. He's like, "Oh, today was warm." Oh man. I was like, "Matt, I just met you, but fuck you, bro."
Dude, it's hot in Miami. I remember I was there once for maybe 2 nights, and I think it was like 90 at night. It was crazy to me.
Yeah. In the summer, it gets pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
Now it's perfect. Now in the middle of the day, it's 68, 75.
Okay.
You know,
I could live with that.
weather's beautiful
Yeah.
in the winter. That's why, you get all the snowbirds. Yeah. Where are you originally from?
New Jersey.
Jersey.
Yeah.
Okay. My godfather lived in Bloomfield.
Bloomfield. Okay.
Yeah, so I used to go see. Now he lives in Miami again, but when he lived up there, I used to go up there a lot. He used to live at this place called Parkway Lofts.
Huh. Okay.
It was cool.
Yeah, I'm down south. Like my family, we're right between like Philly and Atlantic City.
Okay, cool.
Which might factor into what we're talking about today.
yeah. So like South Jersey, Philly. Yeah, that's. I have a good friend of mine. He's from that area too.
Oh, cool.
It's cool. Yeah. So what was it like growing up, like in that part of the country?
I mean, I've been asked that a couple of times. It's like a weird one, right? Because I think we all just like, it's just like normal. Like, I don't know, but
but it's different. You know, I can like if someone asks me, "Oh, how's it? What's it like growing up in Miami?"
Sure,
it's different. You know?
Sure. No, I get that 100%. I mean, it was cool. Big into like sports, the Philly sports teams and stuff. Growing up in the exact spot that I was at, there's not like entirely that much to do in town. So you're kind of going to Philly, or you're going to Atlantic City, or you're going to DC or to New York, right? It's kind of like this central point. It's not like there's nothing around, but nothing like huge. And so growing up was like normal suburban life, public school, good group of friends. Just loved watching the sports and traveling into Philly anytime we wanted to see a show or go to a game.
That's sick.
Yeah.
What's the name of your town? Where you from?
Washington Township.
Washington Township.
Yeah. There's like 3 of them in New Jersey though, so that's probably not going to help anyone either.
That's funny. That's another thing about up north that's so different from Miami. Like the history and the culture is so rich into like America and that kind of stuff.
See, but I feel the opposite. I feel like going down there, the culture's so rich because there's like it's different.
The international culture is very rich. The American culture up here is you have Boston and Jersey, all these areas, DC that were like heavy into the founding of the country. Yeah. So you have more of the American history and that kind of stuff. Down south, it's Miami. You need a passport to go to Miami. It's another country. It's totally different. All of us speak Spanish. No one speaks English. Everyone speaks Spanish.
I remember that.
Yeah, I'm Cuban on both sides of my family. So that's like 70% of the city. Then you got a whole bunch of Venezuelans and But I always like learning about. Well, my dad's a truck driver, so I drove around a lot. So I know a little bit about like a lot of the states and stuff. But it's always cool to see how other kids grew up.
Yeah, sure.
How old are you?
25.
25.
Yeah.
So you're a bit younger than me. I'm 32.
32.
But yeah, it's always cool to see, other parts of the country, how people grew up. You guys have winter up here, the snow.
Oh, yeah, we do. It's weird. It's been a weird one. It's like, it's kind of nice out today, but 2 days ago, it was freezing my ass off.
Oh, my God. It's terrible.
Yeah.
That's one of the main reasons I could never move from Miami.
I don't blame you.
The weather.
As long as you're, like, I'd toast to a crisp if I was in Miami. I'd be burning. We had to fix the lights because I was pale as a ghost before we even started. But, I had a good time when I was down there.
That's cool. Where are your parents from?
Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have, like your lineage, where your blood is from, or like what country and all that?
Yeah, my mom's family, her mother was from Egypt, believe it or not. So she was Egyptian and British.
Okay. Cool.
Her father, his family was from Ukraine. So they came over during, right before World War II. And then my dad's side, they are, I believe, Scottish or British, somewhere around there.
I see the Scottish a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But it's, we don't, I don't really know my dad's side of the family that well. So I knew my mom's side a little bit better. I mean, we all live together and we're all close, but, his family, they're from Jersey. I guess they go deeper back from when they first came over.
When I was a kid, I used to watch a lot of like Comedy Central and that kind of stuff, like stand-up comedy. So I'd hear these people doing these impressions of like, I'm from Scotland and all that stuff. And I learned how to do it, but I've never met anybody from... It's funny because I lived in Miami, so I grew up around like Hispanic people, and I knew how to do all these weird like accents, but I had never met anyone from Scotland. It was so funny.
Me neither. I guess if that is where they came from, it was hundreds of years ago.
Right. It's a long time ago.
So they're from Jersey.
Yeah, Jersey. All right, so you're growing up, middle school, high school. What are you into? Like, what do you like? What are your hobbies? What are you passionate about?
Yeah, so middle school, I was trying to figure out what sports I wanted to stick with, because that's right around the age where you got to kind of pick something if you want to play it kind of seriously in high school. And so I was between baseball and soccer, and I ended up choosing soccer to play, and I took it like super seriously up until I was probably 16, 17 years old. I was also playing tennis at the time because that was like the spring season. Soccer was the fall season, so I could play each one. Loved to play tennis. That was the most fun that I ever had playing a sport. But was really heavy into sports, and then was playing the trumpet and then the cello. I thought it was because I really liked music, but in the end it was for college. It was more about like getting it on the resume. So a lot of what I did was focused on actually getting into college.
Okay.
At age 12, I was.
The playing an instrument thing is more of a up north thing. You know how like they always try to get kids to learn an instrument.
Sure.
In Miami, I don't really unless they love music at a young age. No one tries to learn an instrument. It's funny.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's you have to just like music. It's like he likes he plays the piano or whatever.
I would say like the majority of people I know played an instrument at some point.
Right.
For maybe a year, but they.
But at some point, yeah. Yeah, with us, we had music class, but it wasn't like they didn't teach us how to.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's I noticed that all my cousins that grew up here. My uncle lives up here in Monroe. They all. I remember one of my cousins playing the violin and.
Sure.
But that didn't. I don't know. That's interesting culture. See, goes back to
a
cultural
little bit
thing,
culture there.
Yeah, definitely. So soccer
and tennis
until 16, 17.
Yeah.
You're about to graduate high school?
Yeah, right around that time. It would have been 17, 18, and that's I guess right around the time I started to do some gambling as well.
Okay. You started young, man.
Yeah, I know. So, I mean, I don't even know if we gave the context to start, but I'm in recovery from a gambling addiction now. I made my last bet November the 12th, 2022, and I actually make content to try to help people to figure out if they have a gambling addiction, and if they do, how to get help.
I love that, man.
But yes, I definitely started young.
I don't think I've ever met anyone who started gambling that young. It's not a thing for like teenagers to. I mean, we'll bet $20 to see who wins an arm wrestling, or like bet $30 to see who wins a pool game or something. But nothing as far that I can remember. I don't remember anybody betting like that in high school.
That could be.
That's an interesting.
That could be true, but it also could be that you just didn't know. It's the only. Well, even if you're not addicted to it at that point, it's the only like addictive type hobby that you can kind of hide really well. I mean, not the only one. I guess there's social media. There's like excessive porn use. You could hide those things, but you can't hide drugs, can't hide alcohol for too long. You
can for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess gambling is the same until someone shows up and they're like, where's all your stuff?
Yeah, exactly. For real.
Oh, yeah, I sold all of it,
And even then you could come up with some kind of excuse like, oh, yeah, I was trying to get like extra money to start a business, or like I was like paying off my college. Like there's so many answers when it comes to money that it doesn't have to be gambling.
And gambling, this is really interesting because I don't think I've ever met someone who was a gambling addict. So this is going to be cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So 17,
yeah,
you start gambling.
17, 18, yeah. So
okay.
That's
so where was it?
Yeah.
How did it happen? Who introduced you to gambling? Like that kind of stuff.
So yeah, it was daily fantasy sports to start. I had done fantasy sports, but I don't even really count it. Like fantasy football, I was doing it since I was probably 12 or 13. That was maybe for $20, right? So technically, I could say I started gambling then, but it wasn't the same as what it was when I was 18. And so that was like the FanDuel and the DraftKings, like those early contests that they had. What they said was those aren't gambling. Those are sweepstakes. Those are competitions. And so you can do it at 18 rather than 21. And when I was 18 and I was still watching all these games, I was watching the Sixers, the Flyers, the Phillies, the Eagles with my friends and with my family. Now all of a sudden I go, oh, well, I'm already watching it. I might as well take this contest, right? I might as well put some money on it. It's not big, $10, $20 here and there. But right away, like my friends and I would pick a contest, we'd play it. That would be the 7 o'clock games. They'd win or they'd lose. They'd go to sleep at 10. I'm 18 years old. I have to get up. Do you remember how early I had to get up for high school? It was ridiculous.
Of course, yeah.
Like get up at 6 a.m. the next day, but I'm staying up until 3 in the morning chasing those losses by taking the West Coast contests. And then if there was anything even further out. And that was like the first couple of weeks that I was doing it. Like people say, when did you know you were addicted to gambling? I could probably tell you like within 2 or 3 weeks after starting. But that quickly wasn't enough because the contests, they ran out at a certain point and then you had to wait till the next day. So I started doing regular sports betting with like a bookie. And then there were these websites that kind of operated in this weird like gray area of legality.
Right, where you could use them to bet it, yeah.
Yeah. So
I've heard of those.
They're 18 and up, a lot of those. So like the Bovadas, the 5 Dimes, the sportsbetting.ag, they're all like licensed in the Caribbean and stuff like that. So depending on where you live, it's changed now with how much it's been legalized here. But at that time, you could gamble on anything if you were 18 and you were living in Washington, D.C., which is where I ended up going to school for college. So as soon as I moved, I made the school's address my home address, and then I was gambling every day.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. How much were you gambling?
Yeah. So
at that point, we'll get into later, but at
Sure.
that point, like when you started and then when you went into college, like how much were you gambling? Because I remember high school and college, I didn't make much money.
Exactly. Me neither. It's like it's important to take reference points, I think, right? So as a 18-year-old, my job was that I worked at an ice cream store. In Jersey at the time, minimum wage was $8.38 an hour. So I would work at the ice cream store. I'd make like $12 an hour with tips maybe. Then I'd go and do one of these contests, and it would be a $10 entry, and I'd win $100 if I got like 58th place or something like that, right? And I was like, oh my God, I can make twice what I make in a day by just gambling on it. And so at this time, I was putting everything that I had back into it. We're not rich. I'm a middle-class family. I had all my own disposable income from working this big-time ice cream job. So it's a couple $100, couple $1,000. But all of it consistently is going into the contest.
Every dollar you have is going into gambling.
Exactly, every dollar. And then when you move to a bookie situation like that, you're gambling on credit. So basically you have
and that's when you can get in trouble.
You can get in a ton of trouble. But basically you have a conversation like, hey, this is kind of what I'm comfortable with losing. This is how it starts, right? This is what I'm comfortable with losing. Say it's $500 of credit. They go, okay, no problem. That's what we'll do for this week. But then if that first week you win $2,000, your next line of credit is $2,500. It's not back to $500. And so you're not going to this area where you're winning and then you're resetting. It's continuing along with you. So at the time, I started with a $500 credit limit, but I won a couple of games in the beginning because I was betting on the Warriors. It's when Kevin Durant was on the Warriors.
Okay.
They kept coming back. They sucked in the first half. There's no statistical basis for this, but they sucked. Then they'd come back and win. I think they lost like 8 games that season. So I was winning. And all of a sudden, 18-year-old making $8.38 an hour, my credit limit was like $5,000 on this book.
That's wild.
Yeah, and I have no way of paying it back if I'm losing.
Right.
Other than the money that I had previously won. So in their eyes, they're like, oh, we'll just get our money back. But in my eyes, I was like, that money's already gone. And you keep that credit limit as you go. So, yeah, I hope that answered it. It was getting to be a point where I couldn't afford it.
As an 18-year-old kid,
yeah,
you're betting with a book and you have a $5,000 credit limit? That's
a
wild.
week, yeah.
A week?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And like if I lost $5,000, which I did many times, I came from the money that I had maybe won in the beginning, but after a certain point there was nothing left.
Right.
And now I was in debt with them, and they would freeze the book until you'd pay off a certain amount.
Right.
But as a gambling addict, as someone who's gotten to the point where you have to gamble to feel that thrill, to feel that rush, even as a 19-year-old kid at this point, that's what you're going to do. You're going to go and pay that off as soon as you can so that you can win the rest back in your mind. That's the only way to get out of it, right? That's what you tell yourself.
Yeah, because there's no other means. Like,
That's what you tell yourself.
That's wild, man. So you're 19 years old. All right, so let's keep going. So you're 19 years old. You have this credit limit. At what point does it get deep with this specific bookie. Like go in this specific situation, you have that $5,000 credit limit a week. At one point, does it get so bad that the bookie is pulling you aside and telling you, look, bro?
Yeah. I mean, that was pretty much an ongoing conversation, I would say. But, there's 2 points that come to mind, and they were both in the spring of, I guess that would have been 2018. So the first was that March Madness was the very first time that a 16 seed beat a 1 seed. And it was UMBC. They beat Virginia in the first round. And the only thing that's worse to a problem gambler than losing a bet is not making a bet that you would have won. And so I didn't have money on that game. They were probably like a 32-point underdog, something like that.
Right.
And they won. So I said, I can't believe I didn't know that was going to happen. That was so obvious. It was the first time it ever happened in history, right?
Right.
I'll bet on them the next game. And I'll put the whole credit limit that I have on them because they beat the 1 seed, so they're obviously going to beat the 9 seed that they're playing next. And then they lost. They played Kansas State. I think they lost by like 8 or 9 points. And I was screwed for a couple months. I wasn't necessarily in debt, but I was tapped out. Then spring training baseball. The Yankees, I think they were playing, I want to say it was the Nationals, but I can't tell you that with certainty. Spring training baseball. I'm in freshman year calculus class, sitting in the back of the room on my computer watching this game play while the guy's giving a lecture. And I see like the Nationals hit like a walk-off home run. And I was like, oh my God. And the reason that I was saying that was because I, once again, put the whole credit limit on them. So it went from putting like all the money that I could on the teams that I thought would win to putting all the money that I could on whatever team was playing that I thought had a chance.
Right.
It progressed. And if there were to be skill involved in sports betting, within a very short period of time, I threw that out the window for just consistent bets being placed. So that was the time that I had to actually tell my family, like, hey, I lost a bunch of money gambling. They knew I was gambling. They didn't know quite how much, and they didn't know that I was making such risky bets.
Right.
But I had to tell them, hey, like, I'm in debt. And they bailed me out with the bookie, closed the account with him. And I spent that summer working 2 jobs, like the whole summer.
Would you say when you had to approach your parents and tell them what was going on, was that maybe the first time you saw gambling a little differently?
I would love to tell you yes. But I think more realistically, I told myself that was bad luck. It'll be better the next time.
That's horrible.
All this is a money problem. Once I get out of this financial hole and I pay off this debt, I'll be good and I can rebuild and find my way to win. Because it's not like you're functioning out of total like illogical desperation when you're addicted to gambling. It's completely illogical, but it's like you're remembering the times that things went well. Because when you gamble, things might go well 45% of the time. And you're remembering that that's always a possibility without also remembering that that's not supposed to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when that happened, I was like, that could have gone either way. That could have been a walk-off home run the other way, and I could have made that money back, and I would have been up money, right? There's plenty of times where you lose by half a point. You lose your parlay by 1 leg, and you think, oh, well, that was just bad luck. That was just bad luck. That phrase is going to kill so many people.
What I think is crazy is, to me, like if we took out the fact that you were talking about gambling, to me you sound like the ultimate optimist, right? Like let's ignore the fact, like pretend you don't know what subject we're talking about. You sound like the ultimate optimist, like, oh, it's gonna work out. And philosophically, as a person who's like been through some crazy stuff and came out the other side a better person, intrinsically I'm with that philosophy. But it's crazy how this is one of those cases where that philosophy just doesn't work.
Yeah. It's like people always say, don't give up, you're a quitter if you give up, right? In 99% of life situations, that's true. You keep going, you push through failures. But in some situations, it's actually statistically rigged against you. And if you continue, you're only feeding into it.
Right.
And so that idea of being an optimist, I think that actually feeds into a lot of the marketing that we see from gambling companies nowadays. Because if you keep the mindset that it'll work out the next time, they're going to extract more value from you. So they keep telling you, hey, that one went badly. Here's $100. Try again.
Right. Yeah. And they keep reeling you in and reeling you in.
Exactly.
That's wild. I want to talk about gambling companies, but we'll get to that later. So your parents bail you out. You start working that summer.
Yep.
You tell yourself it was bad luck.
Yep.
We'll reset this debt, and then maybe I can come back.
Yep.
So keep going. What happens after that?
Well, I go back to school, and the same kind of situation plays out. Can't really pinpoint what the bets were this time around, but that becomes a pattern, and that pattern, it leads to me going through that cycle 5 more times after that. So yeah, between the age of 18 and 24, I went into debt 6 different times to the point where I had to work a second job to pay it off. And when I'm saying work a second job, I don't mean like 50 hours a week. I'm talking like 70 to 80. And as like a 20-year-old, when your friends are out in the summer and they're going to the beach, you're clocking in for your second shift delivering Chinese food. It doesn't feel so good. But realistically, yeah, that pattern just kept repeating itself. And I think what was really happening in addition to that was I was becoming super hyper fixated on the games. It started off as something that was fun, and then it became something that distracted me from everything else in my life. And I can remember, I just told the story the other day, so it's at the top of my mind. When I was working one of those second jobs, I was playing a poker tournament on my phone. And the way that I would get into the car, it was a pizza delivery job. Say I had 2 pizzas and then a bag of food on top of it.
Right.
I'd put the pizzas on top of the car. I'd grab the bag of food and I'd put it in, and then I'd take the 2 pizzas and I'd put it on the floor so that they didn't shuffle around. So I'm playing this poker tournament. I grab the bag of food and I get into the car and I start driving. I drive 20 minutes. I'm playing while I'm driving. It's on my dashboard. I get to the house that I'm supposed to deliver the food to, and I get out and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't put the pizzas in the car. The pizzas are on the roof of the car. So I get up, and of course they're not, because I drove 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I drove back, and they were 2 large pizzas in the trees in the woods next to the pizza place. And I had to explain to the shop owner, hey, left the pizzas on the roof. I didn't tell them it's because I was gambling, but it was, they made fun of me a lot, and rightfully so. But I became like so hyper fixated on what I was doing that I didn't care about anyone or anything else around me, because I figured that anything that was happening could be resolved once I won. So I always had this mindset of, if I win a bunch of money, the girlfriend that hates me, the friends that are not enjoying my company anymore, the family that's mad at me, the job that I don't like, all of it will get resolved because I won't have to worry about anything because I'll be rich. Like, this was the kind of thinking that I had. Right. And that's what I was going through for about 4 years, or 6 years total, but 4 years from that point.
I hear similar perspectives from so I've been to prison, right? And when I did time in prison, I remember hearing that kind of, those things being said about some guys who were in there. They're like, man, that was always what I was thinking, like, oh, my problems will be over, I'll just make this money, and then everything will be better. Yeah. And then they'd go do it again. No, I just need a little more, and do it again, and just need a little more, and do it again. Whether it was drug dealing or fraud, right. I hear I went to federal prison, so it's kind of like a little bit of everything. And it's interesting that you say it that way, because, oh man, I just, I'll get rich and then all my problems will be solved.
It's the idea that it's a financial problem.
Yeah.
And it's in any situation, right? The real problem is not the money when it comes to gambling. The real problem is what you're doing in pursuit of that ideal and what you're giving up in pursuit of that. So you are chasing after a big win to impress the people that you love, the people that you want to love, to feel like you're accomplishing something. And while you're doing that, your friends are hating you because you're not hanging out with them.
Right.
Your girlfriend wants to know why she's not getting any attention from you. And you're losing ambition. Everything else is fading away. Like, if you had a business, it's falling apart. If you're at school, your grades are going to shit. All because once I get this win, it won't matter.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it was terrible, to be honest.
All right, so I know you said 19 to 24, but let's try to narrow it down. So all that happens. When does it get to the point where you max out several times and you hit rock bottom several times, but it kind of sounds like there's a pattern where you hit rock bottom, you get out of it somehow, and then you get to hit a worse rock bottom, then you get out of that somehow, and then you hit a worse rock bottom.
Yeah.
So kind of guide me through that then. Like, you ended up getting into the hole again, right? Let's go through that.
Yeah. So I think that what you've just described were financial rock bottoms, but at no point during that time was I actually deep down considering stopping.
Like a spiritual rock bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first time I hit a spiritual rock bottom wasn't as a result of a loss. It was as a result of like finally asking myself why I'm doing this. So, I guess I'll put a pin in that for a second. Going through these highs and lows, it was always that I just said it was bad luck. It was always that it wasn't my fault. It was the player's fault for missing that shot that he obviously should have made. It was the bookie's fault for
not accepting responsibility.
Exactly. You just keep pushing it down the road. The time that I really felt like the need to make a change, and it wasn't the last time that I gambled, but it was the first time that I thought to myself, like, what the hell are you doing? I had told myself that I'll win enough money that I can travel around the world, do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want. I had a win, and I used that to buy a plane ticket to France to meet up with someone that I was dating at the time. And I flew to France. Within 2 hours of landing, I was in the bathroom of the hotel spinning slots on my phone. And I thought, hold on. You're here because you won all this money and you feel great. You're like the best. Why are you still gambling if you accomplished what you said you wanted to? And I had no answer for myself. And I literally spun out all of the money that I had, spun out and bet on sports throughout the rest of that night, ignoring the girl that I had gone to meet up with, more or less. And then I was just like, damn, man, like, what the hell are you doing? And when I came back, I actually went to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and I stayed clean for 8 months after that point. But it was the first time I actually questioned what I was doing, besides putting the blame on someone else or just treating it as a financial problem.
You know what I think is wild? Some people never go through their whole lives and they never get to that realization moment. It doesn't even have to be a person who has an addictive personality or has a problem like that. It could be someone who just lives a miserable life that they're not happy with. And they never get to that point where they're like, well, what am I doing? Yeah. And luckily, I've had several moments in my life where I've asked myself, what am I doing? I don't. Why is my life like this? Like, I don't want to be this guy. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be around this person. So what's scary is some people go on autopilot for their whole life.
It's scary to confront that.
Yeah.
If you confront that, you're questioning what you might have been doing for a decade prior to that. Like, was it all a waste? That's such a horrible question to have to ask.
And it's again that it gives me a crazy feeling in my stomach to know that some people die without ever having that moment where they question what they're doing.
It's the sunk cost fallacy too. If I said at that point, you know what, you've been gambling for 6 years, like, can't stop now. It's all going to work out at some point soon. I might still be going. Might still be going right now.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you're so that towards when you decide to stop? All right. So no, you go 8 months clean. All right. So how old are you now?
I would have been 23.
23. Okay. So what's it like the first time since you were 17 going 8 months without gambling? What goes through your mind? What are you doing, like the meetings and that kind of stuff?
It was awful.
You hated it.
It was genuinely awful. But I think there was a reason for it. So I guess it was February 8th, 2022. I went to my first meeting and I loved it. Like, I felt like I was finally in a room with people who understood me. I was talking to other gambling addicts. We were talking through these insane thoughts that we have that, I'm talking about now, and it seems to make sense to you. I don't know if people listening will feel that way, but I hope that they can at least empathize with it. But like, it felt good. I felt like I was gaining something. It felt like I was moving in a direction that meant something. But then a couple months went by, and the only tangible metric that I had for success in my life was the number of days since I gambled. That is not fulfilling. After, in the beginning, it's fulfilling because you're trying to get out of it. You're dealing with it. So, you hit that 1 month, you hit that 3 months, you're feeling great. Like that 90-day token. Great, you're feeling good. Then you're like, all right, I hate my job. I'm fat. I'm drinking too much. I'm eating like crap. I'm not exercising. Everything is terrible, but at least I didn't gamble. Like, it starts to just wear you down, like if you're not doing anything else.
Yeah.
And so after 8 months of kind of being back and forth, I just felt sorry for myself. And I used that as an excuse. And on November the 12th, I had what was the worst day of gambling that I've ever had. So I woke up in the morning and I was feeling bad for myself. Went out for drinks, actually with my girlfriend that's out in the hallway. I had never gambled while dating her except for that one day. And so that day the Eagles were playing, and I was like, I'm going to bet on it. I'm going to bet on the Eagles. And I did, and I won. But I felt guilty for doing it because I had 8 months clean up until that day. So I went and I tried to withdraw it. This was Parks Casino in Pennsylvania, and there's their online app. I tried to hit withdraw, and there was like a delay, which is one thing that gambling companies do to keep your money in.
That sucks.
But so this delay, I was like, all right, I need this money out. I don't want to be tempted to spend it because I am a gambling addict. I know that. I've been going for 8 months and talking about it. I can't get it. I'll just go to the casino and I'll go up to the desk and I'll ask them for it. That was my idea. So I did. And they said, can't do anything about it. There's a delay on it. We have to wait the 24 hours, the 72 hours, whatever it was. I said, okay, no problem. So now I turned around and I said, oh shit, I'm in a casino. I gambled an hour ago, not 8 months ago. If I gamble all day today, my last bet date is going to be the same. And so I went,
my God.
And I gambled for the next 12 hours. Gambled,
What time
drank.
was this? What time of the day?
Well, I got there around probably like 4, I would say, but I gambled until, like 3 or 4 in the morning.
That's nuts.
Yeah. I took 3 cash advances and I maxed out a credit card. I lost all the money that I had in my bank account. So going from having a small win in the morning to being down what would turn into 6 months of debt, working 80 hours a week. And these aren't ice cream jobs anymore. This is, I was working as a financial analyst, ironically, and then
ironically,
and a bartender. But I had to work like 80 hours a week to pay that off over the next 6 months. But I remember that night I had another moment of realization, because in the casino you have to have cash because they don't have cards.
Right,
so I had that entire amount that I had lost that day in cash. And I went to the bathroom at like 9 or 10. And I was like, I had a moment of panic. I was like, I think I dropped some of the money. I think I dropped, because it was this big wad of cash. And then I started laughing to myself. And I said, what would it matter if you drop that money? You're going to lose it anyway. You might as well have dropped it. Then someone else might have had a good night.
Right.
And I proceeded to lose the rest of it in the next, 5-6 hours or whatever it was.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Wow. What was the total?
That
day.
That day. 16.
16,000?
Yeah.
That hurts if you're not a rich man to lose $16,000.
All of it, yeah.
So that was all the money you had and 3 cash advances, you said?
So it was a full credit card, yeah. A $10K balance or so.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
It wasn't good. But it was, I think the bigger wake-up call than the money was that thought in the bathroom. It really was. It was like, what logical person has a thought that if you dropped money, it was a better alternative than what you were about to do?
Yeah.
That's terrible.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah. But I got myself back into a meeting the next day.
Good.
And that's when things changed, but it wasn't necessarily because I changed with the meeting. I kept going to what I was doing before. When I went to that meeting, I had 1 week. I had one more week go by, and this guy stopped showing up at the meeting. A stereotype about those meetings, which is totally true, is that everyone's really old.
You were like the youngest guy.
I'm always the youngest guy everywhere I go. But there was me, 23, 24 at the time, and then there's this guy that's maybe he was 33, 34, and then 70 and 80-year-old guys. So when he stopped showing up, it was pretty obvious to me. I was like, all right.
Where's this guy? Yeah.
I'm like, where'd he go? I'm way too young compared to everyone else here is what I was thinking. And don't get me wrong, I love going to those meetings. I love those guys. And my sponsor, he's in his 70s. I love him. But I said, all right, I got to give him a call, the 33-year-old guy. And I did, and he had gone back. He had a relapse right around the same time. And I said, listen, man, I don't know what the answer is, because last week I just fucked up my life for the foreseeable future. But I know it's not doing that because I'm dealing with the consequences right now. You don't want to do that. He said, you know what? You could be right. Maybe I'll see you soon. And he hung up. I saw him again the next week. He came back into the meetings. At this point now, today, he's actually doing really well. He's putting a down payment on a house. He hasn't gambled, in a long time.
Good for him.
But when I said that to him, it was like the first time in a really long time that I did something for someone that wasn't myself. I didn't gain anything by telling him that. It didn't change anything about my life, I thought. But he came back in and he's doing well. And I didn't make him come back in. He's the one that had to do the work. But that initial spark of helping someone to get back towards the direction that would help them, that made me feel good. And I said, that's what I want to do. So I recorded myself saying basically the same thing, and I put it on YouTube. And nobody watched it. It was a shitty video. And she told me, she said, your video sucked. She said, I watched it, it sucked.
Welcome to starting something new.
For real. I actually had a microphone that wasn't attached to anything. And I had the wire running out, and I was holding it so it looked like I was using it. But so
That's funny.
So she told me, she said, make it more exciting, say the same thing, but make it more exciting, make it shorter, and put it on TikTok. And I was like, TikTok? Like I don't have TikTok. It's for kids who dance. Like I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But I did it. And within the first 2 weeks of making videos on TikTok, I think I posted maybe like 3 or 4. One of them did like 1.3 mil.
That's awesome, man.
And I was like,
the power of TikTok.
Yeah. I was like, geez, like maybe there's something to this. And I just went crazy on it. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
That's sick, man. That's good.
Thank you.
Good. And it's an interesting niche because you're the first person I'm sure I might have ran into a gambling addict or two that I just didn't know they were a gambling addict.
For sure.
But you're the first person who's verbally telling their story, which I admire. It takes courage, especially about something so difficult, because it's easy to talk about when life is going well, the great times, but it's hard to talk about. It's hard to talk about like our darker nature, and that's something I try to do on my podcast, and not to glorify the bad things that humanity can do, but to show people that like this is a part of who we are, And I think denying it or trying to just push it aside isn't the answer. I think talking about it, making other people aware of it. Yeah. You have a gambling problem. Someone else might have a food addiction. Someone else might have a dark past. They might have, done some stuff they regret. Maybe went to prison, something like that. Maybe they just kind of lash out at people sometimes and don't know how to deal with their emotions. It could be many things. But this darker side of us isn't, I feel as if so many people try to ignore it, and that's not really the answer. Instead of ignoring that, channel it into something positive.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of energy to harness there. But instead of, gambling your life away, instead of, doing drugs until you die, instead of doing all these things, you can channel it into something that you choose instead of it letting it control you.
And the thing is, it's so hard to express that point to someone who's going through it. Like if you told me, hey, talk about your gambling problem instead of going and playing like roulette, like I would have been dude, no, like no way. But once you start to do it, you see that it's something that's actually building you up. And until you start to build yourself up, you don't realize you're tearing yourself down with everything that you're doing. I heard one guy said this quote. I probably heard it like a day before I came on Ian's podcast, like last year. But it was that you're most qualified to help the person that you used to be. And when I heard that, I was like,
I like that.
I was like, there's actually something like that kind of put into words what I was trying to do with my content that I didn't know at the time.
You're most qualified to help the person you used to be. I love that. I love that. Interesting question that just came to mind. What percentage, like casinos and that kind of stuff, what percentage of their income do you think comes from regular casual gamblers, and what percentage of their income comes from gambling addicts?
I happen to know like very precisely the answer.
Okay.
So if we didn't set this up, just
no, at all. This literally, I don't know why I just thought of that question, but tell me.
So when it comes to sports betting, a study was done in the UK that found that on this particular online website, 86% of the sports betting profits came from 5% of players, which aligns perfectly to what percent would be addicted to
gambling. The gambling addicts, of course.
Either a gambling addict or someone who's maybe a very, very high roller, but they could also be a gambling addict that can afford it.
That can afford it, yeah.
When it comes to another interesting stat is that 51.2% of slot players, somewhere a little over 50%, are addicted to gambling in any format. Anyone who's playing slots, over half of them are addicted to gambling. And slots drive between 75 to 80% of casino revenues in total. So for a really long time, it's been that slot machines are the game for a gambling addict. But I think we're actually witnessing a shift right now where the sports betting is slowly becoming more like a slot machine.
Because it's the most easily accessible form of gambling nowadays.
It is, but also it's becoming faster. So sports betting just 5 years ago was pick a team or take a spread and wait 90 minutes to find out the result of the game. Now it's who's going to get the next throw in soccer. It's who's going to make the next 3-point in basketball. It's is this play going to go for positive yardage in football? Is the next pitch going to be a strike? That's not something you could predict. That's not something you could make a model for or study. That is a coin flip. It is pushing a slot machine button in the form of a sports bet. But young people view sports betting as investing.
Yeah. It's not investing.
No, not at all.
No, that's one of the craziest things I've ever heard. You're right, though. Yeah. It is seen as like, oh, I'm trying to flip this money. And it's funny, now that I think about it, I've heard 2 or 3 situations where I've heard that and I'm like, bro, that's not investing, man. You're not flipping anything. No. You know, you might as well just, flip a coin, close your eyes, and, that's
a big problem I had, too, with the stock market, was I was convinced that anything to do with stocks was investing. So when I was doing short-dated options trading or leverage trading crypto, which were just kind of like ancillary activities I was doing as a sports gambler, I thought I was investing. I was like, oh, as long as I bring the money and do options trading, that's better. Like my zero-date options way better than my sports bet in terms of being gambling versus investing.
But it's just a different form of gambling.
Yep. It's all coin flips at the end of the day. They're all coin flips.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what we said we could touch up on earlier. So with these sports betting apps, you got like FanDuel and DraftKings and all these books. Let's talk about some stats now. Now that we've gotten your story, and we're about to get to the end of it, where you're doing now and everything. But
sure.
Let's talk a little bit about that now. Like, talk to me about the things they do that you kind of consider as a former person with a former gambling problem. What are some of the things they do that you think are just flat out wrong, that they shouldn't be doing, that do entice people with a problem to get deeper into the hole? Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So I think it's important to preface that when I first stopped gambling, I thought everything about them was evil. Everything that they do, every person that works with them, their entire mindset was to just destroy problem gamblers.
Right.
I don't fully believe that anymore. I think that they do things to maximize profit and they don't think about what might happen.
Right.
I had a very different mindset in the beginning because a lot of all of the groups that try to help problem gamblers in the United States, you know where their funding comes from? The casinos.
Wow.
So, yeah, there's no federal funding for gambling addiction. So all of the funding comes from either state-based grants or donations from the industry, as they refer to it.
Interesting.
So I think
they'll take your money and give it right back to you.
They'll give you a little bit back, I think, but one thing that's just blatantly wrong is within the advertising. I'm not an expert on game design or game psychology, but I know that the advertising is leading people to believe things that simply aren't true when it comes to gambling. And take, for example, right, when you see a commercial for the stock market, for, say, an ETF that they're selling, Invesco QQQ, when you see that pop up, there's a big disclaimer on the bottom. And that disclaimer says that if you invest money into this product, you could lose money. Simple as that. It doesn't say, invest money, you're going to win big. The gambling one says, boom, come here, $500 free play. Everything's going to be great. You're going to get the girl, fireworks, fire blasting on each side. Vanessa Hudgens is going to kiss you on the mouth. It's like that. And then it says, call us if you have a problem. Well, who the hell has a problem? Some loser has a problem. I don't have a problem. I had bad luck. Well, I didn't have enough money then. I don't have a problem. And so the advertisements act as if they're selling a product that's not addictive. And they take no responsibility. The responsibility is passed on to the problem gambler. There's groups within each of these casinos called like the responsible gambling department that I truly believe they want to make a positive impact. It's people that have been tasked to improve player safety, help people not get addicted to gambling. But if they do their job too well, the casinos won't be able to profit in the long run. So they can't let them make too much of a difference. So there's all these tools that they'll say, we have all these tools available to players. If you use this, you can set deposit limits and you won't be able to go into debt on our app. but the utilization rate's less than 1% because they don't market it. Because if they market it, the gambling addicts might not spend all their money, right? So it's this push and pull where the group that's making billions of dollars is being asked to self-regulate and not make billions of dollars. Right. It's a really hard ask, right? Like as an angry recovering gambler in the beginning, I was like, ban them all, like don't let them do anything. But it doesn't make sense from a business perspective to stop them. It has to come from the outside. So there's lots of things that they're doing that I can't see them stopping, because if they stop them, they're going against their own shareholders.
Another thing that I think was pretty wild, I heard you tell a story of how much money you can pull out, and like there was like a kind of like a trick you found.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about it.
So I think what you're talking about is this idea of them not giving much oversight on deposits. And so there's certain like money exchange apps like Venmo that, weren't really meant for deposits to sports books, but they can be used in certain cases. And when it comes to something like Venmo, this is not a sports book problem. This is a Venmo problem. They don't track up to the minute over the weekend. So if you have $500 in your account on a Friday and you make a withdrawal of $500, it won't reflect in your balance until Monday morning. So you can theoretically keep taking $500 withdrawals all weekend, as many times as, until you hit a deposit limit on a sports book, say. You can keep making those deposits as if you have that much money, because when they check in that moment, it says you have $500. So you can find yourself going into debt. It's essentially like getting a credit card that you're taking an advance on that doesn't catch up to you until the end of the weekend.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's. I think it's technically wire fraud.
And then, yeah, I think you're right. And then you wake up Monday morning and you have like a negative $5,000 balance.
Unless you're able to win and put it back, which is something that problem gamblers will tell themselves a lot. If they're taking money from something, say they're stealing money, because a lot of people that I work with did go to prison for embezzling money. Their thought wasn't, I'm going to steal this money and get rich. Their thought was, I'm going to borrow this money.
I'm going to make money and pay it back.
I'm going to pay it back. I believe that the majority of problem gamblers are like genuinely good people, altruistic people who have this thought of like, money's going to solve all the problems, and as soon as I win, I'm going to fix everything. And so a lot of the people that I know that went to prison, like, that was what they said, which is why they're trying to build diversion courts now for gamblers, where they have it for like people with first-time drug offenses. They're trying to build the same thing for gamblers, because they're like, these are good people that found themselves in a terrible position.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I already don't like certain attitudes in certain situations that the court system forces some people with drug addictions and problems into. And I think gambling is similar. If you have a gambling issue, there should be a certain way to go about things, a certain way to understand this person has a problem. Yeah. Compassion is totally lacking in our justice system. That's a whole other conversation. So. Yeah.
And you would think, right, like restitution and then do something to help the person rehabilitate, right?
Yeah.
We want the person to give the money back in some way, whether it's over a longer period of time or not, that they took. But then why send them to prison? Help them. They're going through some shit.
Because it's about punishment. It's not about recuperating. Or it's not about helping you recover or helping you, rehabilitate. It's about punishment, 100%, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of good people that could do a lot of good. But because you turn your back on them, it gives them... I luckily was able to just pull through that, and I have a different attitude in life, so I'm different, but it sucks. There's a lot of good people that get left behind in prison. Yeah. It's not what you think. There's good people in there that just messed up, made it by choice,
It's like anywhere, really. There's good people and bad people everywhere.
100%. So nowadays you're helping people, right, that have gambling issues. So what was the name of your company again? Tell me.
So it's ODAT Gambling Awareness. I've done 3 rebrands, so I'm trying to keep up with it myself.
ODAT Gambling Awareness, okay.
Yeah, so it started off as Rob ODAT, which stands for One Day at a Time. It comes from the literature of like Gamblers Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, NA. Like it's in all of them. It's kind of their slogan and like a prayer at the end. But yeah, I've rebranded a couple times with... The goal's always been to help people who are struggling, but I'm also trying to expand that goal because I'm realizing that 5% of people are struggling, 95% of people are gambling. With the way gambling's going nowadays, that 95%, they're going to be gambling, a lot of them, in a very risky way that maybe is comparable to like how college students will binge drink and could be exhibiting alcoholic behaviors.
Right.
So I want to widen the audience reach. So I've tried to rebrand, and we'll see if it works.
I love that. So what's a typical tell me about, maybe, you don't have to name a person, but how do people reach out to you? What do you do? How do you help them? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I kind of bucket my content into like a couple different categories. One is general awareness. So it's having conversations like we're having now. That might be an interview with someone about their gambling story. It might be telling my story. The second is kind of like a how-to. So if you are a problem gambler, how do you pay off debts? How do you tell your family about it? These are kind of questions that I try to answer through the content. And then, the third one. I just made like the pillars, and I'm trying to remember the third one. How-to, awareness. I don't have my phone. And then when people reach out to me, like what's really important is letting them know that they're not alone, because for a really long time, I thought I was the only person on earth with a gambling problem. And so people reach out and they have questions. A lot of the questions are usually, how do you stop gambling? Or how much money did you lose? Or if they're in kind of a state of panic, it's, how do I pay off this debt before like tomorrow? It's like impossible questions that I get usually. The way that I envision my role is to function essentially as an extension of like 1-800-GAMBLER. I'm not affiliated with them, but when you call them, what they'll do is listen to your problem, point you in the direction that they think you can find help. They don't perform therapy over the phone. They don't give you money. Like they don't do any of that.
Right.
They point you towards there. And so that's what I try to do. I went out and I got like a certification to be a gambling counselor. But when I started to do those sessions, it just didn't feel like I was giving them enough. And maybe that was my own imposter syndrome. But I really just try to point people towards resources that can help them.
Yeah, and that's a tough one, because some people can have conversations that have a difference in a person's mentality and a person's mindset, and some people can't. So it's good to know that maybe that's not your thing. Me personally, I like talking to people that have issues. First off, I like hearing the human mind just is so fascinating, right? So I love hearing how people's thought processes and why they do this or why they do that. So for me, it's almost like, one, it's therapy. It's therapeutic for them because it helps them get off their chest, but also they see that someone's willing to listen. It's not even about helping them or knowing what to say. Sometimes just being a good listener, can make a difference in someone's life. It's made a difference in my life.
I agree. And I think I try to do that. What I was kind of getting at is like, I've had conversations with a lot of therapists, a lot of people who have been in recovery for 20, 30 years. And I compare what they would say to what I say. And I'm very blunt and reactionary when people talk to me. And I think that it's just a result of answering the same couple questions so many times. Because I probably answered them a couple, 10, 20,000 times. I don't know. But I mean, I've just had such great conversations with people that I feel like they would be better for them to talk to. And there's kind of a unspoken referral network, not to make money, but just this guy lives in New Jersey, so he's going to talk to Rob. And people will call me. I have a couple people that I have to call later today. But I always like to default to a counselor or someone that's like a peer support specialist. So people go out and get certifications, and then they work every day with problem gamblers. They're also in recovery. That's more what I would do. But I've always just found my like niche to be making this content, getting that first intervention point.
It's really cool. I personally haven't seen content like this online, so it's cool. It's cool to see that you're doing something great. Keep doing what you're doing, because there's a lot of Robs out there who need your help. Podcasting has given me purpose like I couldn't even imagine. I'm feeling this much purpose. This like, I don't know if you believe in flow state, but when I'm doing this, I'm untouchable, you know? And I feel like that could be your purpose,
100% agreed. People might not get that if they're not creators in some way themselves. And it doesn't need to be video, but like creating something
100%
that it really just gives you a whole nother way to express yourself.
Right. I agree. Rob, it was great having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Typically I have 3 closing questions. So I'll ask first, what inspires you?
What inspires me? I've actually thought about this a little bit recently, and I'm not much of a crier. I don't usually cry. There's a couple of things that make me tear up like every time I see it, and it's like when someone makes beautiful music, when someone wins a game that they weren't supposed to win.
Like the underdog story.
The underdog story, the expression of creativity. It's like moments where I feel moved to emotion are when someone else is accomplishing something that I could see the worst version of myself wanting to accomplish. I don't know if I've expressed that in a good way or not, but seeing someone do something that you can tell really meant something to them inspires me.
I love that. Yeah. I'm a person I'm always looking to stay in a positive mindset, and I'm always looking for positive movies to watch. I'm a storyteller. I love stories. So great stories, I think, can change the world. And I think whenever you see a great story play out, that's like inspirational, you know? So
I think so too.
I totally get it. Second, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Well, I'm going to drive back and film another couple videos. But I think realistically, if I was to think about what's next, I really want to widen the niche, and I want to help normalize talking about problem gambling, because it's seen as this like push it off to the side. If you have a problem, that's your problem. I want people to recognize that this is an incredibly addictive product, and if you go down the wrong path and you go too far, it can show itself in the same way that any substance can show in terms of addictiveness. And I want to be a part of helping people realize that this is something we need to get on top of.
I agree. I think it's like you said, it's one of those issues that someone can have that they can hide for a long time. And honestly, I don't even think it's spoken about as much as it should be.
It's called the hidden addiction.
Yeah. It's wild. So definitely, I love that, man. And last question: How do you want to be remembered?
Oof. For a really long time, I wanted to be remembered as the winner. Now I want to be remembered as the guy that was able to turn it around and help other people do the same.
I love that. They say in any story, there's 4 types of characters. All stories are the same. You have the hero, the villain, the wise man, and the victim, right? So the 4 of them are actually the same person. The only difference is their perspective in life. So the hero, his mentality is, the world wronged me. I don't want this to happen to anybody else. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen to anybody else. He makes a difference in other people's lives. The villain says, the world wronged me, so I'm going to make everybody hurt. I'm in pain, so everybody should be in pain with me. The wise man says, I've been a hero long enough. It's time for me to pass the baton and show someone else how to do this. And then the victim says, the world hurt me, come save me. It's incredible. It's the same person. They just have 4 different perspectives. And I think that perspective you have now of going through what you went through and wanting to help someone else, it's the difference between being remembered for something great and being a great person and being considered like someone who did a big change and someone who just fell by the wayside.
I would say that I was definitely having a victim mindset while I was gambling, and now I'm coming out of it and I'm trying to help others avoid that.
I love that, man. Perspective might be my favorite word in the English language.
Love that.
Rob, it was great having you on.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming out. All righty, guys. Oh, how can people connect with you?
Anywhere that if people want to connect with me, they can check out ODAT Gambling Awareness on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube.
Perfect. All righty, guys. Another episode of the Montana Method Podcast. As always, push it to the limit. The world is yours. If you're not chasing a dream, life is meaningless, guys. Catch you on the next one. Say goodnight to the bad guy.
Nice, man. Great stuff.
I've been out here hustling all my life. Every day we get into it. Really out here in these streets. That's day and night. Like there's nothing to it. When I was going through it, dog, I never got your call. I never asked for nothing, no. But now I want it all. I promise I'ma do it. Came from rags to riches. Rags to riches. Came from rags to riches. Rags to riches. Came from rags.